My friend, and welcome back to my channel. My name's CaitlinAnwyn for anyone who's new here, and let's get back into building in Planet Zoo. And we are continuing to try to finish off this underwater zoo, and today we're going to be building the Gondola Ride Stations, starting with a lighthouse. And I've had to speed this up a little bit more than I usually do, but it should be fine because we're sort of staying in one spot for a while, so it should be okay. So I'm starting with the lighthouse, and I wanted this nice and bright with the white and red, just because the majority of the zoo has like blue walls, so I wanted the lighthouse to be slightly different. And I didn't really like the Aquatic pack fences, so I've used the Australia pack ones, and I think they look okay. And I wanted to make like a light little box for the inside of that like glass bit for the actual lighthouse light. We don't really have a light that's super big that could really emulate what a lighthouse looks like, and I can't get them to spin, so I put one on either side, of one on one side and one on the other, so it kind of looks like it's spinning and we get to have a little bit more light going on in it. And I did make a little building for the station, but as you can probably tell, that is just after I'd built the first lot of the gondola ride, the first track, the one that looks like spaghetti. But I didn't particularly like how I'd set that out, and I'm gonna make something slightly different, but I still wanted to show you that I'd made like a little entranceway for the lighthouse. And now onto the station building. So I've completely changed it from the little one you seen just now with the lighthouse, and I wanted to make it a little bit more interesting to look at because I didn't really like that one. I wanted to replace it with something else, so I thought I would just show you the one that I liked more. And I thought it was kind of blank, so I wanted to add in some windows. One, so when you're on the gondola ride you can sort of see outside of the station itself when you're on the ride, and it just makes the building a little bit more interesting. This is when I picked the colour scheme, which is going to be white, black and red, to go with the lighthouse, because the lighthouse has a black roof and white and red walls obviously, so I wanted to make this white, black and red too. I experimented a bit with the windows using the shop shell sort of window and that bigger frame one, and I decided to use both of them to have like a variant. And I did put some glass walls in as well. I really liked the ones that I'd picked because they had like an opaque part of the window too, so it kind of looked like there was like blinds in it. Like there was like little blinds at the top that could shut, but it's just like an opaque glass bit. I liked it. And then for like the foundation part of the building, I thought I would make it red. Give that little pop of colour in there and match it in more with the lighthouse that I'd built. Like I mentioned, I have sped this video up a little bit more than I usually do because we have had a pack announcement and an update announcement, and I was planning on doing videos up until the week of the update before I knew of the update and the new pack. So now I've sped up these videos a little bit more so we can finish this zoo in time for the next pack release. and I'm super excited because the new pack is going to be slightly different than the aquatic pack, and all of the previous packs that we have had in Planet Zoo, because this one is going to be a specific animal pack. If you haven't seen the news, we are going to be having a Southeast Asia animal pack, and it releases on the 30th of March. So I've changed my schedule a little bit, and we're going to be finishing this zoo off on Saturday, and then on Wednesday we might have a little bit of a surprise, because next Tuesday we're going to have a new pack and a new update. I really can't wait for the new pack. I've rewatched the trailer like so many times to look at the new animals, because they're getting 8 new animals, so that's like pretty much double what we've had with the aquatic pack. And what's good is Frontier haven't actually increased the price of the DLC either, so it's actually going to be $7.99 for me. And yeah, if you know how much the packs are in your own currency, you will know how much it is, because they haven't changed the price. Like I mentioned in the last video, I am theming each station to be sort of similar to the habitat the station is near. So in the first station is going to be like more tropical themed with the palm trees, and I kind of decided that I wanted to keep some of the queue pathway open, because I didn't want to fully enclose the whole thing, because then it wouldn't really look like a little lighthouse building. It would be a little bit too chunky, so I've only enclosed like the end of the queue and the beginning of the exit. The side of the station was kind of difficult to figure out, because obviously I didn't want it to look like the gondola ride was really going through any of the walls. I wanted to make sure that they all fit in nicely with everything. So like the sides have got like this sort of E shape to them, so the gondola ride fits in between the little gaps. That's kind of how I worked it anyway. I've sized the little entrance and exit buildings, so each little station building isn't exactly the same, just to distinguish once you're coming onto the ride as well which building you're getting into, like the guests are getting into, and just to make it a little bit more interesting to look at. I'm kind of gutted we are having this update just after I finished off the aquatic zoo, because in the update there is going to be a customizable water feature, and we're going to be able to change the color of the water, which would have been super helpful in like my abandoned water park build, because I could have actually made the water all green and murky like it had been left and abandoned, without making the animals miserable. I did raise a little part of the side of the station to make it a little bit more rocky to sit the lighthouse in, so it looks like a proper lighthouse sitting on some rocks. I've really enjoyed building with water, and I really enjoyed building this whole zoo, but I think it's pretty much completed now. We just wanted to finish it off and fill it out and make it a proper zoo instead of like a collection of habitats, which I think I've successfully done, especially with the addition of these station buildings. It definitely makes it a lot nicer to look at, because the station itself is kind of boring. Yeah, I've recolored the ride itself and the track itself to match in with the station buildings too, so I think everything looks quite nice and matchy. This station building is by the seal habitat, so I've made this one very beachy looking with the rocky island area here for the lighthouse. All the lighthouses are pretty much the same. I think some might be slightly taller than others, but they're all pretty much the same. And this station was probably the most difficult because this is the one by the zoo entrance. And that's another thing coming in the update actually, is we can have more than one zoo entrance too, which I'm not sure how that would work in this zoo, but I think it would work really well in some other zoos to have more than one entrance, especially to reduce the amount of crowding in certain areas. So maybe it would actually work a lot better in this zoo, but I am a little bit controlling and I only want my guests to be able to see under the water first, so I wouldn't like them to like enter through the back of this zoo. I only want them to be able to see like under the water when they first come in. So it might not work too well for me, but it would definitely be good for some other zoos. If you're experiencing lots of crowding, you could make extra entrances, which is pretty cool. So this one was difficult because it's so crammed in those buildings that you can see, and the path is raised, so it was going above the roof of the building, and I wasn't really happy with that. I didn't really like the fact that the guests were basically walking on the roof. So what I did instead was change the angle of the path queue, but I wanted to make sure that there was enough queuing space because this station is the closest to the entrance. So I think this is going to be the busiest station of the lot of them. When I was testing this with it being open, not just like testing the ride, this queue did fill up the fastest. And I think the one that's in between the penguins and the otters is the quietest at the moment, but that might change as the game plays through, really, because guests are finicky like that, and you just never know which ones are going to decide whether they want to go through which habitats. But this ride is slightly different as well because this is the highest one as well, because I needed the track to go above the buildings, like those little hallway buildings, to get to the different habitats. Because I needed to do that, it had to be slightly, the station had to be slightly higher than the rest of the stations. It was nice to have more of that red foundation too. I wanted to keep the white bit the same height, so I just made the red bit a bit longer and a bit taller. And the little entrance and exit pokey outy bits are slightly different too, because they needed to be at different angles to avoid that little blue buildings as well. They look really small compared to the lighthouse and stuff, but I like that these station buildings are quite extravagant. From the exit of the station you could see all of the staff buildings, and I didn't really like that too much, so I wanted to raise the terrain around that building to try and block the guests' view of the staff buildings, and that'll hopefully stop them from getting uncomfortable because they don't like the view of the staff buildings. I always find that kind of odd because we decorate things so nicely, and I get it when they're just those like ugly bog standard staff buildings, but if they've got like nice things around them like these aquatic style ones, surely the guests should be fine with it, but sometimes they're not, so I just try and block the view because this zoo is really successful in keeping the guests happy, and they don't have too much like negative impact around them. So I just wanted to block off that area a little bit with some terrain, and I put in some extra rocks because I couldn't get the terrain too close to the building without it clipping through, so I used some of the same rocks that I used in the terrapin build. I really wish I could place trees just outside of the boundary as well, but it will not let you. Even though they're there and you can pick them up and move them, you can't place them just outside of the zoo boundary line. So instead, I've decided to build like a small garden area for this queue, because I couldn't really change the terrain too much and I couldn't put the regular trees that I'd put around the rest of the zoo. I just made like this little garden area with lots of different bushes and smaller plants to fit in those little gaps. And I really like this. Like, it's slightly different to the majority of the park because it's just lots of smaller bushes and trees and it's not super themed to anything else. This is like the regular station. This is like the entrance station, so it's not going to be too themed like some of the other stations. It's just going to have like a Planet Zoo original theme with just some bushes and some nice little purpley plants, which the purple goes with some of the roof patterns, so the roof is blue and purple, so that just goes with that, and it just fills in those little gaps around the path and the building nicely. And I'm hoping that gives it some nice queue scenery too, so the guests aren't too unhappy about queuing in this area, because this is going to be the busiest one. Overall, I'm happy with how the stations turned out, and I'm happy with how I themed each of the stations. And that's going to be it for today's video, just showing off all of the station buildings with the lighthouses. I'm really happy with how these turned out. My favourite one is probably the one by the seal habitat. Let me know which lighthouse building was your favourite, like how I themed them and stuff. And I will see you Saturday with the last part of this speed build series, because we are having a new pack next week. I want to finish this off this week. So we are ready for the Southeast Asia Animals pack. How exciting! I can't wait to see all of those new animals, like pretty much double what we've seen so far in DLCs. If you enjoyed this video, smash that like button, and if you haven't already and you would like to, it would mean a lot to me if you could subscribe and hit the bell to be notified whenever I upload a new video. I upload on Wednesdays and Saturdays. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I will see you next time. Goodbye!